Hi, and welcome to Studio SN. My name is Sara Naumann, and today we're going to take a look at some really fun ways to use Punchinella. Today's project uses Punchinella to create this patterned background. You can see it right here. And I'm going to show you what Punchinella is, because that's the first question people usually ask. Well, Punchinella is also known as sequin waste. So this is a piece of Punchinella right here, and you can see that when they manufacture sequins, this is the part that's left over. So all of these little holes would be sequins, and then when they're punched out, you get sequin waste. Now it's also known sometimes as Punchinello, so if you're Googling it, you may look under those different words, but it's a really nice kind of a lightweight plastic. You can use it again and again and again, so it's a really nice kind of reusable stencil, if you will. So to create that background, the first thing I'm going to do is take my Punchinella, and it comes on a roll, so it really tends to have this rolly tendency. So I'm going to take it and tape it down onto my craft sheet. So I'm just going to use a little bit of tape at each corner and just kind of tack it down. You don't need to really tape down the whole thing, but just the corners will do. And then the next thing I'm going to do is bring in my gelatos. And have I told you that I'm addicted to these? These are so fun, and they're great for this technique. So I'm using cotton candy, and then the green is lime. And gelatos are pigment sticks, so it's kind of like a lip balm. I just take off the cap, and then I've got the color right here. And I'm just going to put this onto my Punchinella. Now, I'm not trying to get it through the holes. I'm actually trying to get it onto the plastic. So I'll do a little bit of green. I'm going to add a little bit of blue. I'm not using a real hard pressure or anything, just kind of scrubbing it on here. It looks a lot brighter than it's showing up on your computer probably, so you may have to trust me on that. So I've got my blue and my green on here. Now what I'm going to do is lift off the color from the Punchinella. And I'm going to lift it off with tape. So I'm using clear packing tape. This is about 2 inches wide. I got it at my local hardware store, so you can probably find it at your office supply store, sometimes even your grocery store. So you just need to pull off a length of this and then cut it. And I'm not going to work with a really long piece. This piece is just maybe, I don't know, 5 inches long. You can probably hardly see it, but trust me, I've got it. It's as wide as my fingers, as my hand. And I'm just going to put this down onto the Punchinella. Place it down, and then I'm going to burnish it. Now you could use a bone folder like I am. You could also use, your gelato. Or the handle of your scissors also works as a bone folder sometimes. Now I'm holding on to one end of this tape because I don't want it to get all the way stuck down. I need to have something that I can hang on to lift it up. Make sure that this stays down, and then lifting off the tape, and I have my dots on my tape. So this is what I'm going to put down onto my white cardstock. And I'm hoping that this won't stick onto itself. Let me bring in my cardstock, my paper. And you can see I've already put one strip down on here. This card project calls for 2 strips to go right next to each other. And if you're worried about lining them up, have no fear. If you get a space in there, no problem. I'm going to show you how to disguise that. And just put the second piece down. I tend to work slowly on this part so that it doesn't get stuck in places that I don't want it to or doubles up on itself. And then just smooth that down, and then I have my tape transfer onto my background paper. So let me lift off my Punchinella. You can see that I still have some color on here, so I could continue with my my technique if I wanted to. But I'm going to get this up and bring back in my card project so that you can see. If you had a bit of a gap between those 2 strips of tape, guess what? I had a pretty big gap, so I covered it with tape or with ribbon. I just disguised it and tied a knot in a piece of grosgrain ribbon. And then once I had trimmed this piece down, I matted it onto pink cardstock, wrapped that ribbon around, and secured it to the back. So it's disguising the gap. Or even if you don't have a gap, you'll have a line where the two pieces of tape meet up. So this will help to hide it. Now for the focal part of the card on here, this is a stamped image, and the stamp comes from a set from Hot Off the Press, and it's called Fancy a Cuppa. I love it because it's all tea and some coffee, but mostly tea items on here, and I'm a big tea drinker, so I love this. And what I've done is just simply stamped the teacup onto a piece of white cardstock, and then I've colored it in with my distress markers. And the markers I used are Barn Door, that's the red. I used Peeled Paint, which is the green, and Broken China, which is the blue. And these are probably the three colors that I use the most. And I have a lot of these pens, but I use these three the most. I'm using the brush tip of this instead of the fine tip. There are two tips. One is quite fine, and then the brush tip is surprisingly works really well for even detail stamps like this one. And I am not a colorist by any means. You know, there are people who have great skill in coloring and shading and highlighting, and I am not one of those people, so I'm faking it a little bit. So I'm just coloring the area of the teacup with the Broken China, which is the blue. I'm going to come in with my peeled paint and color some of the leaves on this flower down here. And you can see I'm leaving some white areas on there, and I'm going to show you why in just a second. And then the flowers are colored with the red, which is Barn Door. I think I want that handle to be green too, so I'm color that. Now for these little wisps of steam, I'm going to color those, but I'm not going to color on top of them. I'm coloring right next to them. So this is not even coloring outside the lines, it's coloring next to the lines. I told you I'm not a pro at this, but I have fun and I think it looks nice. Okay, so I'm going around the outside edges there. Then what I'm going to do is add a little bit of water, just a quick spritz of water. And the distress markers, like the distress ink pads, react with water. So you want to have just a little spritzer of some sort. Give it a quick blast, and then immediately take your either a paper towel or some kind of cloth and blot it. And that will set the color. You don't have to do this part, but I think it adds a really pretty sort of wispy watercolor effect, and it blends out those areas where I traced or went next to this the steam coming from my little cup of tea. So let me bring back in the card project, and you can see it as it is all together. I did add on this stamped piece the sentiment that says "You're terrific." So I also colored that in with the same three markers. Also spritzed it with a little bit of water, and then got a really pretty watercolor effect there. I put this up on green cardstock, and then this has been added to the front of the card with foam tape. And the reason I did that is because this ribbon, although it's not really lumpy, it does have some dimension to it. So if you put it down, if you put this down directly with like a glue stick, it can tend to show a little lump on there. So foam tape will help give it a little bit of dimension. So this is using Punchinella to create a background. I really hope you enjoyed the technique, and I thank you so much for watching. For more inspiration, please stop on by saranaumann.com. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.